Welcome to Flying Upstream, the podcast where we uncover the choices, practices, and wisdom that defy mainstream conventions. I'm Kristen.
And I'm Louisa, and together we're here to illuminate the alternative paths that have shaped human experiences through the ages. In each episode, we'll examine ways to move beyond societal norms. We're passionate about how timeless wisdom and unique lifestyle choices can foster healthier, sustainable, and enriching lives.
Join us as we navigate, challenge, and celebrate the beauty and insight of walking the road less traveled. If you've ever felt like you're flying north for the winter while everyone else is flying south, you've found your flock.
Free spirits, welcome back to another episode of the Flying Upstream podcast, the place where we celebrate those who have mustered the courage to walk their own paths, the path less walked, and the path outside of the mainstream conventions. Today's guest is a perfect embodiment of this podcast's vision by sharing her transformation and inviting others to find the same in themselves.
That's right, folks. Our guest today is Joanna Horton McPherson. Joanna is a serial entrepreneur, speaker, and award-winning actor who specializes in leadership and transformation. She helps business leaders find their inspiring message to move their audience. A Harvard-trained educator, Joanna has founded global nonprofits and schools. An advanced practitioner of Buddhist meditation, she teaches that working with the mind and heart is our most powerful tool for creating the life we want. Joanna is also a poet, certified and accredited impact investor, and mother. She and her family reside in Arizona, Maine, and Costa Rica. Joanna, welcome to Flying Upstream.
Thank you. I feel like I'm in good company with what we're going to talk about today.
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. And I want to start at the beginning because I want to hear everything that you have to say. But the beginning is a great place for us, for our listeners. We all know and understand the impact of childhood on the trajectory of the path that we walk as adults. What was the most impactful thing that happened in your childhood that has gotten you to where you are today?
That's a great entry question. I actually asked my clients that question myself. So now I'm on the other end of the table. I think the way it relates to what life I find myself in now goes back to something I would hear time and time again from teachers. I did not talk in class, and I'm going back to like 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. When people would look at me, I would blush and feel like, for no reason, like humiliated, like I didn't want to be seen or talked to. I don't remember why I ever felt that way, but I would just get so flooded with resistance and would not speak and was not living up to my potential in school. She's such a joy, but she doesn't live up to her potential. And that was a struggle for me to be like, why am I so caught in my shell? I mean, a lot of people can relate to this. As a preteen, I always was thinking, everyone's thinking about me right now. Like my teacher is thinking about me. And also, nobody cares about me. So there's so much going on in my inner world. This gets to my Buddhist path, by the way. I got on stage at age 13 in a production, and I quickly realized my job was to inhabit the space. And I did not know how to do that. And why was I on stage in the first place? So I had to learn what it was to convey and send myself out beyond my inner world into the outer world to connect and tell a story. And that changed everything and made me really who I am now. And when people see my work and who I am, it seems unbelievable. But that is what a transformation is that there's the before and the after.
I love that. That is really interesting how you say you kind of felt embarrassed to be seen and just not comfortable and not even deserving, it sounds like.
Yeah.
It sounds like you got into acting and that really took root for you. So as you started to do that and moved into the next phase of your life, talk to us more about your young adulthood and what was inspiring there for you that had an impact on your life today.
Well, let's just keep going with the surprises. I was in a girl punk band. I started being a poet back then, but I was trouble. I was like drinking and doing drugs, and I was what one would consider troubled teen, I suppose, but I always was getting straight A's. I always kept the veneer that I had it all together, but I was seriously struggling. And I think part of my acting path was realizing how extremely dramatic I was. And I still am. I mean, extremely emotional, extremely in touch with my feelings, and also very driven by them. But what that actually makes you do once you decide to grow up, and I put it that way on purpose, is you learn to manage yourself better. So it's not that I'm not emotional, it's that there's this term in Buddhism called give the crazy cow a vast field. So if you know you have a thing that you get all caught up in, what you do is you actually increase your capacity to accommodate that rather than constantly try to control it. Like, stop being crazy. Now we're in a place of resistance and control when the whole game is you've just got to find a way to allow that to exist so it can serve and that you can find the things you want, being peaceful, having meaningful connected relationships. And for me, a lot of it was what you just said, Kristen, sense of self, valuing myself, appreciating myself, not using my drama to be a bat to beat myself up with, but to be more comfortable being like a crazy cow sometimes.
I love that. I love that so much. I love the sort of what I took away from what you said is like embracing that aspect of ourselves that we're generally taught by society. Whatever aspect of ourselves does not meet the conventional mold, then we need to work on getting rid of that. But instead, you're saying embracing that and owning that. And one of the things that I want to jump into as we kind of move along your journey to get to where you are today, one of the things we learned about you is that you were a Reiki master at the age of 20. How did that help you heal that anger that you experienced in those teenage years and that troubled teen that you just talked
Yeah,
about?
that's a great question. Really by necessity. I was in such a dark place. I went to college and moved away, and surprise, surprise, I was extremely homesick. I struggled so much at home. And then I get to college. It was in New York. My family's from Maine, and I broke. I was like, I really want to die. It was just very broken inside. And all of it sort of like, now that you don't have people to push off of, you're sitting in it yourself. So now you've got to deal, or you're done, right? You're cooked. You've got to find a way. I needed to heal. I just had to heal. And so I remember going to a therapist office for the first time. I brought myself there at college. It's free. It's included in the whole thing. And I just sobbed. I couldn't speak. I was just so full of grief and pain. I just cried the whole time. Maybe not literally, but I mean, I just needed a safe place to fall apart. And that, gosh, there's so much connection between acting and Buddhism. I have to go on this tangent because it's coming up in my mind. You've got to let the feelings, what we call do you. They need to operate because there's something behind them. There's something that wants to be expressed or felt that when we suppress, and I held so much anger, it was something so much softer. It was forgiveness. And I had to forgive my parents, my mother, and myself for so much conflict. That kind of like dropped the floor out of my house of anger that I'd been living in. And then you get to the next one. It's not like you graduate. You just get to the next thing and the next thing. So the next thing was I need to heal. I went through all the Reiki trainings I could, offered by the nurse in the health office, who was just a gift and a healer. She just happened to mention, I'm just holding this class if you want to do it. And I just became a follower. And that ended up being my first business. I needed to practice, so I started meeting with clients and I had a business going. But it was truly, and still is, I do Reiki nearly every day on me, on situations, on people, on my children, on the world. I mean, prayer, Reiki constantly. So it's a healing path. And for people who talk about manifestation, it's Reiki. Reiki is just a term for like the tradition of working with energy in Japan. This is my view. It's focusing all of your beingness in the present, off of the stuff we usually think about and put our focus on, and on to what we truly intend to be the ultimate and highest good in a situation. And that is what, like, it comes all together for me.
Very, very well said, Joanna. I also practice Reiki. I'm not a Reiki master, and certainly did not discover this when I was 20, although I wish I had. Probably could have saved myself a lot of headache in my travels and my paths. But yeah, and for anyone who's listening that is not familiar with Reiki, it is fascinating. It is one of these things that anyone can do. Doesn't matter your background, your training, where you come from. It's
Yeah.
very accessible. I highly recommend it for anybody who's looking for some healing and you want to have a little more control over your own healing. Highly recommend it. I know that's part of what I got into it too. It's just a little bit of self-healing, and I wanted to be able to do it myself. I didn't want to rely on having to go to other people to do it for me. So but you have described quite a journey, and in your story, you're only in college yet. So help us understand the rest of the story. Because I know that today you help business leaders find their inspiring message to move their audience. And I want to pivot a little to make a jump into some different questions here. So you're a Harvard trained educator who's walking that road less traveled by all mainstream conventions. And do you believe that business leaders are made in the classroom?
Right?
No,
this is great. I'm so excited to answer. I can't even let you finish. Please finish.
Go ahead.
I'm like jumping on this. I am a hypocrite in that because I really needed an accolade, like a Harvard degree, to feel okay about my expertise. And I'm married to a self-made multimillionaire, brilliant person who's just a visionary in his field. He was a Navy veteran. He skipped college. He skipped it. He was someone who knew himself enough to pick up the right tools at the right time. And I bless him for that, because that's something. What if we all knew how to pick up the right tools at the right time? Your question, can you rephrase it so I answer it in the way you asked?
Yeah, just considering the non-traditional path that you've had in your life for your own healing and finding that leadership from within, having that acting background, and now you are training leaders and you are a Harvard trained educator. So how do you think that path kind of comes together for the people that you're training? Do you believe that the business leaders are made in the classroom?
Made in the classroom, that was it. I mean, the answer is that classroom, if you're truly committed to increasing our capacity all the time and increase our definition of ourselves, there is no such thing as a classroom. We find situations to be teachers, and maybe real teachers, mentors, but I'll bring it to my clients and my work. The first exercise I always have people do is what I call the autobiographical timeline. I think actually I have mine. Yeah, I did this again recently for people to see. This is what we call an autobiographical timeline. It's not done. It brings you up to present day. In this exercise, we plot all of the things that happened that are events. And why do we do that? Because if you look back into your own timeline, Lisa and Kristen, thinking back to the questions you're asking me, which you probably have answered in your own, but so many of the things that happened that defined us, we did not plan on. We were making plans. It's not that we weren't planning on things. It's that life happened. And we're always looking back, I was always put in these situations I did not give permission to be in. Like, had to figure this out. I had to figure this. And I wanted to go over here. That's just the way it always is and always has been. We're the ones who keep expecting it to go our way. And so how do I work with clients? It's taking these learnings and becoming witnesses to our own lives and going back and like onboarding it. Instead of being like, why did this happen? It's like, that happened and it brought me this. And so we create a really different relationship to some of those defining events, especially the more juicy, intense ones. The intention of this exercise is not to relive it. It's to go back and extract your insights and your learnings. And I don't really know in a common situation where we take the time to really do that, because it can bring your personal life much more up to date, let's say, with what we're doing professionally, because many of us at a certain point in our career, we just show up more fully than we ever did. And now we're indistinguishable between professional and personal. It's just like me, just how I show up. My clients become capable of having one message after doing this exercise, because they now understand that personal growth is their professional accomplishment. And so the classroom's question, how do I tie it to my own path? I kept starting ventures. I've started several. I've started 4 nonprofits, 2 of which were schools, one of which is still going, and another nonprofit is also still going. And I have this business, and I know that you two will relate to this. I kept having trouble operating other people's systems because either it wasn't like aligned with what I was about, or I just couldn't get corporate jobs. I tried. I really tried. I was a resume hustler for professionally, like for years, but I also was an actor. I was trying to make it at a certain time. I was in New York, and I would go to LA for these training with my teachers. And at a certain point, I just had to come back to the self-value question. I didn't believe that I would make it as an actor. And that's a fear that haunts many people when you get way out in front and live in your dream. Do I really believe in it? Because the risks you're making financially aren't financial risks. It's emotional risk that I believe what I'm investing in is going to go the distance. And I pivoted because I love working with people. And I was like, maybe I'm really just meant to be an acting coach. And I opened a studio, and I was very successful in that. And I still love coaching. That was just a sort of an adaptive path that I took because I wasn't succeeding in the blueprint. There's more to that, but let's just stop there with that part of the story.
That's a great story. I think there's a lot of beautiful things to take away from that. I think one of the main things that I love about what you shared and about how we're connecting today, about unconventional and following your own path. I love what you said about when you just couldn't get corporate jobs. And I know that it's heartbreaking at the time. I think I've personally been there where it's like, oh my God, I got all this education and I prepared for this and I did everything right and I followed the path and the blueprint that they gave me. But then it's not happening for me on the other side. From my perspective, it's like the universe telling you, like, that's not your path. That is not your path. But society is telling us that we're just not trying hard enough and keep going and you keep hitting yourself against a wall. And so I love that you share that, because when it's not meant for you, I think sometimes there's a lot of redirection that the universe tries to do. And we are in our logical brains and are like, no, we're just going to keep trying that way. So I love that you shared that story, but I want to jump into what I want to learn. I'm going to be selfish here today. So I'm sorry, Kristen. When did the Buddhist teachings and when did all of that come in, and share it all? Everything you're because
Spill the tea
I
about
am,
Buddhism.
yes, please do. I want to hear all of it.
I want to first know what your angle is in this. I don't really know you, but what is it that's pulling at you?
My life changed due to a spiritual awakening. I live my life every single day, even when I'm sleeping, or mostly when I'm sleeping in the astral plane, just based on spirituality. The way that I connect with myself is silent meditation. Silence. When people say, what do you like to do for fun? I like to be alone in silence and in meditation. That is fun for me. That is the most joy. If I could do that 10, 12 hours a day, that's exactly what I would do with my life. That's where this is all coming from. That's why I said I'm going to be selfish here.
Oh my gosh. I don't think anyone has said those words to me. I've never heard anyone say it that way before, but we are definitely good company with that. There's nothing like really loving our own company, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I have so much to say about the Buddhist path. I needed to meditate. I needed something when I was a teenager, and I was like reading Zen books and dabbling up until in my 20s. I was married for 2 years, and that marriage ended, and it was excruciating. And I found myself at a meditation center in Atlanta for a writing retreat called The Wisdom of a Broken Heart. And the pain that I could sit with, I could actually, it was too big to hold, but I could really touch all of it on the meditation cushion. And that was so honest and so relieving to be. It's so strange to say I was so relieved to feel all of the pain, but it truly was, because it was no longer consuming where you get lost. I'm fully letting it do me. I'm letting it contact me, and so much stuff could move. And I wrote a lot, and I've really fallen so much into the path of writing in alignment with the working with the mind and heart. I've spent, so much time in retreats trying to become a friend to myself. And I think that's what the Buddhist path really does, is that, maybe you can relate to this, Louisa, something that meditation gives you is something that actually it's taken away from you, which is the ability to deceive myself as easily. The tricks of the mind, the stories I tell, the things I'm pretending don't hold. And that's a really good gift, because you can't really be an authentic person who feels aligned with what she's about in the world unless you're being really honest with yourself. That's the biggest thing. And then just I think that the valuing of the self and being able to contact what happens in our systems. I mean, our unconscious mind is recording everything all the time. And our conscious mind is like the eye of a needle. We can't process all of it, but the heart contains all of that information. I feel like the unconscious mind spills in this part of our body, and we hold things because we're not like really willing to hear something yet, or we're fully expressing something that is true, and we feel open. But in meditation, I think the subconscious mind becomes the foreground, and you're able to, maybe this is what you feel in the astral plane. I'm really interested in what you would say about this, but sitting on a meditation cushion allows everything to surface. And once the static can clear over time, and that may take years or 10 minutes, you can see what's arisen. And what arises, it can be anything, a beautiful thing or a horrible truth. But at least you know you're dealing in reality. There's a big difference between what we want to be true and what is true. Yes. Knowing the difference is the whole game.
Yeah, and I really appreciate the way that you're phrasing all of that, Joanna. And I want to continue on that stream for just a moment there, because you talked about the connection of the heart and the mind.
Yeah.
And it's such a powerful tool for creating the life that we want.
Mm-hmm.
And what would you say to someone who's having a hard time connecting their mind and their heart?
I think I would say, how present do you feel day to day, or like right now? Because everything comes down to the present moment. We don't actually have another life other than what's happening right now. And we spend so much time outside of the now, like, and what's going to happen, and usually like what happened just a minute ago, all the conversations and the stuff we're just in. But I think what meditation does is take our focus, and realizing that it's physical labor to like gather it and put it on something. And that what you're putting it on is right now. So in the moment, to answer your question, everything you need is already here, but we just need to sort of be present to it, and not think about that or think about this, but to not, and to be present in our bodies. So the breath is the primary vehicle for that, and the mind is a companion, because your mind is it's like your eyes, where you're directing your focus, and the breath is what the focus does once it's there. So to attend your mind to the present moment could be like the sounds in the street, or the feeling of heaviness on my chest, or the feeling of the chair. Your attention gets to be present to whatever it's present to, and the breath sustains you. Working with the heart and mind is, I would say, generally the advice is allow it to surface, allow it to be there, allow it in, allow the emotion to operate and have its way. It has movement, and trust it, because we think, I'm feeling this, so it's going to be this way forever, and this is, I have to hold it back. But what if we flipped all of that and we're like, I'm going to cry, I'm going to need to go scream, or like write an angry letter and never send it. But what if we let the emotion have its way and discover what it's trying to tell us? The unconscious mind has information. It's usually delivered in the form of an emotion. So when you sit in silence and attend to this moment, we get to learn this moment has so many shades and colors and textures and feelings. We get to be surprised and like delight in that, and just be grateful that we're alive, and to learn so much. And it never, ever stops. It will never stop. And the transformation isn't like you graduate from a thing in your life. They say we don't solve our problems, we just get over them. It's the like crazy cow, fast field thing. You don't solve the crazy cow. You find a way to liberate yourself from needing to control it. So that's like sort of how you reframe things. The wisdom that will arise can only arise if you allow all of this to be revealed to you.
I love what you just shared about transformation, because I think that's a big misconception. I think a lot of people think of transformation as like everything outside of me, it looks different. When I go through a transformation, that means I'm not living in the same house, I'm not around the same people, I'm not doing the same job. And some of those things may be true, but the transformation, it's within us. And that's where it happens. It's when we basically, for simplicity, I love the way that you said it much better, but like when we can change our perspective, when we can let go and allow whatever is meant to be, understand the lesson that we're meant to take from that, and keep it moving. Like I like to say, like I shared earlier, this is like right along the lines after my own heart and just the way that I live my life. But we've been talking about the Buddhists, and I know it plays a big role and has played a big role for you in your own life. What is something that you believe that the Buddhists got right, that you teach, and that can also help business leaders and maybe even everyone in honing in on the message that will inspire their audience and the people around them?
Great question. Really, just that we can accept life as it is, because all of this bullshit we deal with every day that comes up in the road that we're like mad at, it's the path, and it's not meant to be so smooth. And no one said this would be a smooth ride. I don't know where we ever expected that to happen, right? Like, why are we all upset about everything? It's not meant to be a bubble bath. So we are allowed to learn and grapple. We're allowed to change. We're allowed to pick stuff up and be like, let's experiment with this solution. Or I would say the biggest thing for business leaders, who are just people, by the way, it's all about how you relate to things. It's not the thing, it's how you relate to it that gets to be transformational. Because whether it's the obstacle in the path, whether it's an annoying person, whether it's a non-compliant XYZ, whether it's the bank account, you just said it, Louisa, like people focus on the outcome of the transformation. That's just a symptom of a beautiful thing you cultivate. It's the seeds, it's the process of tilling the soil and watering and gardening, and then the flowers grow. But you can't be like, where are the flowers, but not do this. Like, this is our job, to just work with what our and relate to it as sunshine, as water. And like, why are we yelling at the soil? Let's just really understand there are lessons here, and that's the whole point. For successful people, when we get on stage, and so I work with people to talk about what they've transformed in themselves as their message, as their talk. I like to tell everyone, we can all get on stage and talk, but only some of us inspire when we talk. And why is that? So what's the difference? And the difference is from the audience perspective, and I've not really talked about my acting background, but I've got a lot of insights about that. From the audience, you can see within moments whether you're about to sit through this talk and like you've seen it before, and that's fine, or whether you're about to be moved and maybe really remember this. And we know what we want to be on stage. I would like to be someone who touches my audience and serves them, their journey. We only can do that when we know our journey. And we've done that work before we set foot on stage. So I work with people in the autobiographical timeline, but from there, it's like, what is the thing that made the difference for you today and that operates in you today? And then what happens is it's not just the talk you develop, it's insight about your life. And the talks almost write themselves because you have so many things to share. I could talk about this product I do, or this process I created, or this way that business works. You just open up the inspiring speaker, like you unlock the inspiring speaker level, just from doing that work. Know yourself. Know yourself, know your story, know your message. And that's how we fulfill what we came here to do, when we focus on the learning rather than the accomplishment. Yeah.
Joanna, I think you can definitely consider yourself an inspiring speaker, for sure. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, expertise, and time with us today.
My pleasure. Absolutely flew by. Flying upstream, flying when the time when you're having fun. Yeah, I appreciate being invited to share with you all today and for your great questions.
Of course, it has been our pleasure. Thank you.
I know I meant to explain, if anyone wanted to follow up with me, what that would look like. I work with people individually. I also have a class that I'll be leading starting in January timeframe. My website's joannahortonmcpherson.com. And there's a variety of quizzes to look at. Am I doing what she's talking about? I've made some quizzes very intentionally to help guide people into the process of getting insight about themselves. So check out the quizzes, and then I book calls with people who are wanting to think about being a client as well.
Thank you so much, Joanna. Thank you for sharing that. We will link for our audios links. They will be in the show notes. On YouTube, they will be in the description. Make sure you grab them and work with Joanna. And for everyone listening, thank you. Thank you for tuning in. We hope that Joanna's insights have inspired you to explore your own path and have inspired you to begin your own transformation and become the leader of your own life. Remember that the power to create the life you want lies within you. And to connect with, she can also be found on LinkedIn as Joanna Horton McPherson. And listeners, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for more inspiring stories and unconventional wisdom. Until next time.
All right, free spirits, that's all the time we have for today on Flying Upstream.
We hope this episode sparked your curiosity and ignited a desire to explore the extraordinary paths less traveled.
Even when the current feels strong, a whole world of possibilities awaits.
We'll see you next time on the other side of mainstream.
So keep questioning, keep challenging, and most importantly, keep flying upstream.